anything about artificial intelligence?
Look,
No.
We have been hearing about AI, automation, technology for some time now, and I think it's fair to say we all feel like it should be changing how we do things. Probably, if we're honest, more than it is changing how we do things. I mean, ChatGPT is my best friend. I talk to it every day, probably more than I talk to most of my team at the moment.
Yeah.
But I think there's more that we should be doing. So this next panel is really exciting, right?
Of course, and I think the more we try and stay away from AI, the more we push back on it, the further we're going to be away from the market in terms of where it's going. AI is moving at a pace faster than any of us can imagine. You know, we remember the films like iRobot. We've been hearing Bill Gates talking about there'll be no jobs left. I mean, he put a report out to say in the next 10 years, we're going to lose half of our workforce. So I think understanding AI and how we can utilize it and grow with it is really important.
Yeah.
So should we call on our next panel?
I think let's call on our next panel. So this one's going to be hosted by Phil Chetter from Protean, and he's going to be joined by
Alex Laqueta from Zerini.
Davinder Aujla from OneFile, and
Derrin Kent from TDM. Huge round of applause for our AI panel, guys.
Hi, Joe. Hi, everybody. We've got a small panel now, luckily, so hopefully we can get through this slightly less interesting part of the day. I say that because those apprentices are just amazing. So I feel like humbled is not the word. Okay, so I'm Phil Chater, not Chatter, founder of Protean. We're a small but powerful consultancy firm. We've been helping companies to improve productivity, efficiency for decades, frankly. And that quite often involves technology, and therefore, recently, it's involved a lot of AI. I'm joined today by Alex, a colleague from our partner Zerini, Davinder from OneFile, and Derrin from the development manager. Okay, if I can quickly, can I just get you to give me one small sentence about why you're here today?
Hi, I'm Alex, a company called Zerini. I'm here today because I'm a geek and my natural habitat is behind a computer screen, not on a stage. But I'm passionate about technology, I'm passionate about AI, and I think it can really empower us all to be more productive across the board.
Hi everyone, I'm Davinder. Why am I here? I don't know.
I didn't warn with this question.
Well, I was quite surprised to be asked actually, but I've been a passionate advocate of the use of technology for education delivery, and I've spent a long time working in technology businesses, and I'm also a mum to 2 children that embrace technology every single day in all aspects of their life. So I'd like to add some interesting narrative to the conversation.
Brilliant, thanks.
And I'm here because I'm an education nerd. So TDM do work with supply-side companies, so we work with a lot of tech companies, and we're interested in agentic AI conversations and systemic AI. But I'm here today mainly to talk about generative AI, tools like Claude and Gemini and Copilot and Chat on GPT-4, and how we use that as an educational organisation. So that's my main reason for being here.
Brilliant, thanks all. We did expect to have a 4th panel member. I tried Claude, didn't want to take part. ChatGPT were too busy helping everybody else. And Gemini, well, they just didn't even answer me after a bit. They said, you've used up all your credits for the month. So I'm sorry about that. Alex, you've got the toughest question here. I mean, the big mistake may be asking this question to a techie. But can you describe very briefly what we're talking about when we say AI?
How long have we got?
About 1 minute.
So really at a high level, I guess, with AI and machine learning, it's all about taking some data, using that data to train a model, and then when you've got that model trained, you can then ask questions, you can make predictions and classifications of novel data that model hasn't seen before. But I guess with generative AI, it's a little bit more nuanced than that. And these models can now take a sequence of data, like words, sentences, and produce a sequence of data. So they can take questions and produce answers. They're pre-trained on millions of records of data, the internet basically, and they're built on very large neural networks using the transformer model, which at a very high level, simplistic level, gives them the AI memory so it can remember. And they learn our language basically, and they can answer things very effectively. I'm pretty sure most people here would have used ChatGPT at least in some essence, but really what they are is a statistical model that's generating data based on input.
And it's interesting you talk about them learning as well about you. So last night I asked a question of ChatGPT, simple question, should I be using AI in my business? And it told me why I should in the context of my business, which was a little bit freaky because I hadn't told it to do that. It just knew what I was interested in. Davinder, so you're a businesswoman, successful businesswoman. Why is AI so important now? Why now are businesses really starting to take this seriously?
I think a common challenge that we all share is operational efficiency and how to drive that across all the different types of businesses, but not only business, in education, various people that engage in education delivery, we want to be able to do more with less. So efficiency is a big reason to implement tools such as AI. And I think the ability as well to multitask at pace, support operational excellence in lots of areas, but also I think the ability to deliver ROI. So really in business terms, it's saying, if we're more efficient, we're going to drive up profit. And I think that's really important. So a business perspective, there's always a rationale behind it. But I actually think, as Alex had mentioned, there's the ability to engage in AI tools that enhance learning as well. So it opens up an opportunity, like you've just said, the machine to learn some data, to actually read up on that and engage in that and implement that in your business. So that's just a couple of reasons, but I could go on.
Yeah, I know. Great, thanks. Derrin, so as a learning provider, what do you find interesting about AI? What are you guys doing?
Talking about the generative tools, so GPT, generative pre-trained transformers, on a large language model. So what's really exciting here is, if we're going to be an effective worker, a lot of people talk about apprenticeships as a hands-on experience, which is fine, but I think importantly nowadays it's a brains-on experience as well, where in order to be a productive member of as a knowledge worker, you've got to be really, really efficient in using the resources you have at your availability to be better, to be good at what you're doing. And so to not use a Gen AI tool would be utter madness. It's a co-intelligence. I mean, silly statistic on this. So GPT 3.5, ChatGPT 3.5, in order for us to train ourselves on the knowledge that thing has, if we read for 8 hours a day, it would take us 20,000 years to get to that level of knowledge. So to have that as your friend, like nowadays, everyone's a manager. So to have that as your resource friend, your researcher, it's like having a team of really efficient graduates who work at the speed of light to get you information back. And so, look, these tools are dreadful places to finish your learning journey and submit before assessment. They're rubbish at that, but they're a brilliant place to begin it. And so we've got a methodology for bringing that into the early phase of a research process. It produces rubbish because it hallucinates. So it not only predicts things badly, it's a tokenistic sort of model.
It will give you an answer. It may not give you an answer,
and it's very confident in itself, and it believes itself massively. It's very persuasive, but it can have chosen really bad sources in the output. So what we have to train our learners to do is to use it, for goodness sake, but then go to more respectable information sources and critique it. But isn't that a brilliant way of developing critical thinking on the part of the learner to go and say, right, let's look at that output, rip it apart, and understand that I'm the human in the loop, and I'm writing this, it's not.
That's fantastic. So that's how you're building AI into the learner journey that you've got.
It's an upfront research stage. and which is like, and that comes before a bit of guided learning that we do as prep, task-based classrooms where we consolidate the understanding, make sure we're all right and we're all on track with what we're going through. But the magic begins when they apply learning in practice and go through tasks to retrieve the knowledge that they need to retrieve before we get to an assessment which doesn't involve AI.
That's brilliant, because to be honest with you, that's exactly what I do with AI every day. You know, how's it going to help me to kick things off and get started?
And one more thing to say before I pass the mic over. I think it's our responsibility. So I think AI for future workers is a functional skill in the same way that English and maths is a functional skill. And I think it's irresponsible of us as education providers, skills providers, to not make that a cross-cutting theme across all of our programs. We really have to seriously get people using this. It's very, very powerful.
Maybe as a quick check, I heard Kasim ask a question, who used AI? Who in the room has used AI in the last week? That's pretty much everybody, I think. That's good. Great, interesting to see. Okay, Alex, so one of the things that we've heard about bias today in a few different environments, but from an AI point of view, bias has some particular meanings. So can you talk about what that is in AI terms, and actually how can AI help to eliminate bias or reduce bias?
Before I answer how it can eliminate it, I might show a problem with AI. I've got a personal anecdote that I used a very early version of ChatGPT to write a nice note to my wife to thank her for what she does. And it assumed what she does was to make the home clean and look after my children. And if you know how the AI is trained, it's pre-trained on data. If that data has bias, which it does, that bias can move through to the model. Now, I'm pleased to say there's a lot of work going on here to fine-tune these models to stop doing that, and the latest versions of the AI won't answer it in that way. But it's something to be mindful of in terms of how they're built, how they work, and we've already heard on the panel from Scarlett and Pat earlier about how prevalent the biases are. That said, the positive side of things is that it can be instructed to be impartial, and they can be instructed to be consistent. So when they're analysing perhaps applications, apprentices maybe applying in an interview and so forth, it can be a technology that could be used to mitigate some of the unconscious biases that humans may have as part of that process.
That's an interesting one. There's certainly a lot of tools around these days to try and completely anonymise people, which is interesting because that takes away some of the positives as well of individuals. Derrin, so how do you think that AI can help to address the different needs of apprentices?
We have to understand, so comments made all the way through today are really, really important. An apprenticeship is a hyper-personalised learning journey where we're talking about succeeding in that employer workplace in that particular role. And it's not just the job the employer wants you to do, it's also the broader aspects of the role. And so understanding how other people are doing that role in different places. So going into that machine, if you like, as a research tool is a really good way of getting a sort of broader understanding that you might get from just the workplace sort of mentoring. So Bloom, you've heard of Benjamin Bloom, who's done the taxonomy and the mastery of the levels. He's also done this 2 Sigma problem, it was 1980s, did a bit of research. And basically the 2 Sigma problem is that if people get one-to-one tuition, it's like 2 sort of standard deviations better than if somebody just sits in a classroom and learns something. So that negotiation over what something means is critically important, and this tool isn't a replacement for the academic. The academics need to be great facilitators now, but it's a fantastic tool for learner, mentor, employer organisation and coach to all use together. And so it's a tool for hyper-personalising the journey. So you're not just sitting in a classroom listening to what somebody's teaching you, you're actually engaging in a conversation with a co-intelligence as well as local intelligence as to how you can apply these things in practice and what's important to know.
So giving the opportunity for more interaction
and good interaction, which, as I say, you need to criticise and check against valid sources. But it broadens the mind much more than a classroom-driven process ever will.
Okay, great. Davinder, so obviously at OneFile, you're a tech company supporting the industry.
Yes.
So how do you see AI tools helping to drive inclusion and retention in apprenticeships? Do you think that the tool, or maybe what are you doing today at OneFile, and how is that helping?
So I'll use an example of an AI-enabled tool that we launched last year, and it was specifically to address learner dropout rates. But actually, it was to go beyond that. It was actually to look at early warning signs to enable those that are delivering educational programs to actually intervene early and actually improve dropout rates. What we needed to do, so we took on the challenge to really look at dropout rates, and we thought, what can we do to help as a provider in the industry? How can we elevate the experience? And part of that development of the solution was really around looking at analysing huge amounts of data, which AI is great at doing. But actually, what happens then, once we've analysed that data, what we need to be able to do is to push that back to the user based on a user profile, what's meaningful to them. And actually, by using this tool, what we were able to do is to push the right information to the right people so that they're able to look at individual learners or cohorts or specific demographic of learner and actually spot early warning signs that may then lead to a potential dropout or lower engagement levels. So that's just one example of something that we're doing and we're working on. And another exciting challenge that we're looking at is delivering efficiency. I was asked quite a direct question by somebody in the industry, very, very large provider, and they said, well, we have hundreds of assessors. How do we get them more time back? Because I'd love to, get them doing more of what they need to do, but they're a really expensive resource. It's incredibly challenging. So one of the things that we're looking at is how we optimize assessment marking, for example, is another area. All of this is driving efficiency, but it's actually ensuring that we're dealing with the problem at hand. And as a supplier, how we can work with the industry to make sure we're building things that are relevant.
Brilliant. So how do you decide where to use AI?
Oh, good question. I feel, personally, I think it's very, very subjective at times, which is, we have a number of stakeholders that we work with. I mean, I've got a statistic. We've got 2 million learners that go through our platform. So these are learners from all different backgrounds, but lots and lots of data there. So we already know we've got a data lake. We already know we've got millions of learners that are going through the platform, but we've also got different stakeholders. We've got training providers, we've got employers, we've got further education establishments. So who needs what? Everybody's got a different priority. So what we try and do is we try to be agnostic. So we try to provide a tool that can be tailored or tweaked based on that particular stakeholder. So I think user experience is really important. So, this is such a big question. I could talk about it for ages. So the nerd side is coming out here as well. But I think the user experience is important. Making decisions on what we do and what we create, I think we have to do best endeavours. We're never going to do everything for everybody, but I think building tools that are agnostic, that you can tailor based on the user experience is absolutely the way forward.
Brilliant, that's fantastic. So, question for all of you, one at a time. Start with you, Alex. Can you give me, very briefly, you're quite new to the apprentice space, although you've ended up having a conversation with Derrin about how you could basically possibly get yourself one, which is great, great networking. From what you've seen today, where do you think the most exciting area of AI implementation is in the apprenticeship space?
That's a good question. To clean up what Davinder just said about using it as assessment, in fact, we're using technologies in that space to provide feedback to apprentices. But I think, from my perspective, the thing that most excites me is when I look at my 10-year-old son and I look at what he's using AI for, much as Derrin was saying. He's able to program the most amazing Roblox games at 10 years old, and he's able to do that because he's got access to AI, which is coaching him and teaching him how to do that. I mean, he asks me questions and I do my best to help him, but I'm not always available. This is all the time, and I look at what he's able to achieve with with this technology. And I think for apprentices, there's a lot of worry about, is it going to take jobs? Is it going to limit the opportunity? But I'm a little bit more optimistic than that, and I see it creating opportunity. And I think if being an apprentice right now, where you're learning new skills, it's an amazing tool to help enable that.
How do I follow that? So I think where I think we're going to make some big impacts, I feel, is if we look at the change in technology implementation in education post-COVID, and we look at learners coming through post-COVID and the amount of technology that they've used, particularly AI-enabled technology, to personalise their learning journey. We've got a cohort there that are already used to using fantastic tools in their journey, whether it's academic or vocational. They're already doing this, so their expectation level is quite high. So I think where we make an impact here is really around giving our educators post K through 12, further and higher education and employer providers the ability to continue providing that level of engagement technology. And what I mean by that is the same standard of delivery methods that these learners will be used to using. So personalised learning, as an example, that Derrin used, which is the ability that it's not a set curriculum for everybody. There is an ability there for you to customise and tailor based on what that individual needs. And I think that's where it becomes super impactful. If we're trying to level the playing field, for example, and we're trying to create equal opportunities for all apprentices, I think that becomes even more important, that we're able, therefore, to personalise that delivery. And tools like AI they enable the delivery in that way.
That's brilliant. And I guess if you're talking about neurodiversity and different people's needs, different people's learning styles, the ability of these tools to adapt is amazing. Derrin, what's your thoughts?
So long-term excitement is the answer to the question, we know it can learn, Gen AI, but can it teach? Can it teach? And for the first time in my professional life, I've started to saying, I think it might be able to. So agentic AI can reason, and one of our employees called Farex have got Synthesia as an avatar, and they've got authentication against that of voice and face, which are identifiers. So it knows who you are. It speaks to you. It can remember things about you, like you were saying earlier. It remembers you and carries on a conversation. So it could. That's the long-term excitement. Can this thing teach? Because that would be great to have as an ally in our armoury. But short-term, I'm more excited about. Hey guys, what's the difference between writing it first, then getting AI to check it, as opposed to getting AI to do the first draft and you checking it? Let's have those conversations. And as academics, we don't have to type notes when we're doing our coaching interventions anymore. We can get Copilot to transcribe it, get it to give a little summary, paste that into the record, and get it to set some smart targets which we can review and stick into their learning plan. And so there are very practical, immediate things that we're excited about doing.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Fantastic. Thank you very much. Right, we're a bit short on time today, so if I can maybe wrap up there. Thanks, panel, for that. It's really helpful. There's certainly been a lot of hype around AI in the last few years, well, probably the last 18 months, really. I mean, it seems to have come out of nowhere, really. But obviously, it's been around for a long, long time. There's nothing particularly new. Alex will say that. A lot of this is just really changing because of these large language models, the ChatGPTs of this world, which have been like a tipping point. Suddenly, virtually everybody in this room has used it in the last week. It's a bit like when Google first appeared, or I don't know what other example I could use. It's been quite a change. And quite frankly, if you haven't tried as many different AI tools as you can, you really should. Don't just rely on ChatGPT. Definitely look at Notebook LM. That's brilliant. You can just put a few documents in there and say, summarise those for me. It's some great tools. But we've talked about the benefits that can come for teaching learners how to use AI, and I think that's brilliant. And we've also talked about in the business world, in terms of the system supporting it, how from an efficiency point of view, productivity point of view, how you make that process better, how you make it better for the learning providers. If you've got a fully automated army of avatar teachers, you haven't even got to just set them to work. Fantastic. From our experience, we're process improvement consultants. That's what we do, and so it's all about the productivity, efficiency, and benefits that way. And what I see changing, and what I think will happen next, we'll see a lot more, is this AI is just going to become embedded in your business processes that you're using every day. So at OneFile, the tools you're talking about, in a couple of years' time, people won't even be thinking about the fact that they're using GPT in the background to get the data, or Copilot, or whatever else they're doing. It will just become the norm. So I think we'll all be taking it for granted, quite frankly. That's how I see it. It's very exciting at the moment. It's actually not as complex as you think it is. It's actually one way I'd actually look at it. It's not as complex as you think it is. So that technology is here today. It can help you today, and it's a lot more accessible than you think it is. But it is just a tool to help you do a job better. It's part of a process. An example I give is, if you're making a car manufacturing line, you can all kind of picture a car manufacturing line. It's made up of lots of tools, processes, systems, and people, end to end. The real question is, where do you focus your time and effort in improving the process? And just because you can do AI doesn't mean to say that you have to do it. It's finding the right place that's going to make that transformative difference and really take away jobs that people don't want to do and let them focus on the things that really matter, like teaching and properly engaging learners. Okay, well, that's it from us. Hopefully we've given the team some of their time back that they needed. And thanks to my panel there, it's been fantastic.